The following episode was recorded at the 2025 PLRB Claims Conference, live from the show floor of the Expo. So you may hear some of the buzz and activity of the Expo in the background. Welcome to What's the Scenario with PLRB, where we explore claims and coverage scenarios relevant to insurance professionals. I'm Brendan McLaughlin.
Hey, I'm Mike Broad.
I'm Tim Havler.
All right, Tim, what's the scenario?
The insured is a plumber
Aha.
who runs a small business, himself and one employee.
Ooh.
One day, the employee was driving the company truck the wrong way on a busy highway.
Whoa.
He had missed several do not enter signs, then passed 20 plus cars going the wrong way until he realized it, at which point he panicked, swerved, and flipped the truck.
He had made it that far, Tim, you know what I mean?
Responding police officers
yes.
noted a likelihood of illegal drugs in his system,
Ooh, that's not good.
although he disputes it.
It was the passengers, yes.
The plumber, that is the business, that is the insured
Yes.
on our property policy,
Uh-huh.
is now making a claim under their business owners policy, BP
what?
0030713, for the $50,000 worth of plumbing equipment, materials, supplies, tools, etc.,
Okay.
which was in the van
And the truck and the van,
at
all
the
right?
time of the accident.
Okay.
So, our scenario, it's a coverage question.
Uh-huh.
We just want to know if there's coverage for those things under the BP form.
Ooh.
All right.
But first, I've sensed a change in scenery.
Yes.
Mike,
What's
you
going on
usually
here?
aren't sitting in a blue chair when I
I
talk
know.
to you, and same with you, Brendan. You
Yeah.
want to fill me in on what the difference is here?
Well, Tim, as you know, we are at the annual fabulous 2025 Claims Conference.
Oh.
Look at us.
Yes,
In
yes,
the
we
new
are.
and awesome, excitingly PLRB booth. First time we've done a booth at a conference forever, so we're excited to be here. There's a buzz here in the Expo. It's our last day of the Expo, but it's exciting to be here live at the Claims Conference talking to you fabulous gentlemen. So doesn't get any better than this in my personal opinion.
Yeah, and what's your favorite thing about the conference so far?
It's been a busy couple days. Yesterday we had some spotlights right here in the booth. We had a few people talking about, different services that PLRB offers, what we cover in our departments, met with some members. I just spent the whole morning recording for PLRB Presents, which are, the really inspirational 20-minute talks, and also helping out with some logistics for the Future of Insurance panel, which is a really great series. So we're keeping busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, Tim, I think it's funny because insurance is, even though it's a big industry, it's kind of a small world. So as you filter around the claims conference, both in the expo hall and out in the classes, you're walking through the hall and then you see somebody you worked with 20 years ago and hey. So I've seen a number of folks that I knew in the industry that I haven't seen in years or I see every year at the claims conference. So it's great to reconnect with folks that you've known in your past and new friends that you meet at the conference. So it's the people. It's the fun. 3,500-ish here this year at the conference, and you're going to find somebody new to talk to and chat with.
And related to that, one of my favorite things
Yes.
is, because, I'm answering coverage questions all day, which is usually an email comes to me, so I just see a name, and then we're emailing. And then sometimes in the classes, I'll see the name on the badge and say, I've answered at least 5 questions for you
Right.
before. And then, go introduce yourself and
And
say hi
hopefully
to the
they were
person.
happy with your answers and your service. Of
always,
course they were.
always.
That is
This
without
is,
question.
Yes.
Can I start this off?
Yeah.
May I?
Yeah.
Would that be okay? Because I want to hit one thing. If you listen to our podcast or watch us, you know that Tim generally has a copy of the policy forms with him. And I'm just curious if here at the claims conference maybe you brought a pocket edition of the
No, we
CP
have an
form?
excerpted policy only.
Oh, all right, very good.
So
let
the
me
BP is a big policy. To
I know.
print that one out and fold it up and fit it in your pocket, I don't know if that's going to work.
And it's the hottest dance craze across the nation, the BOP, right? No, all right. All right, I apologize.
Okay,
let
one
me-
dad joke per episode.
Right. That's it. Let me ask you this one, sir, because the first thing that kind of comes to mind to me is you have a business owner policy. We're talking about contents, right? And usually you think those are things that are inside of a building, not inside of a van. So is there any coverage issues or struggles there with property that's in a van versus in the building?
It's the off-premises
Right.
issue.
That's what I'm
Yes.
getting at. That was
So-
a much easier way of saying it than what I did. So yes, right.
So, as you know, homeowners policies, worldwide coverage,
Right.
anywhere in the world. It's actually that it says that in the policy,
Right.
worldwide coverage. Business owners and commercial policies different. They're primarily on-premises forms.
Right.
The thought is that businesses are a little bit more sensitive to what insurance they're buying. So in order to give them the most appropriate forms, if they need some sort of off-premises coverage, then we should talk about it in advance and set them up with what we need and charge them the appropriate premiums.
Makes sense.
But in both of these forms, there is at least a limited small amount of coverage that
Yeah?
we can give just as part of the base form. And in the BP policy, this is, of course, the off-premises coverage. So I'm going to refer to my excerpted policy.
Nice.
You may extend the insurance provided by this policy to apply to your covered property other than money and securities while it is in the course of transit or at a premises you do not own, lease, or operate.
Ooh. At a premise.
Okay.
Oh, Brendan,
So-
you're an attorney, so help me out here.
Which you want to start? I think
Yeah.
those are two. We can do transit and then premises you don't own, lease, or operate. Which
Perfect.
one do you want to start with?
Well, transit came first, but premises is really blowing my mind right now because is a road a premises?
Or the
We're
van.
on the road. Is the van itself a premises? I'm questioning reality here. I feel like a premises is like a place and not a road.
Right.
I don't know.
I'm with you. I would argue this the same. I'm not aware of any case law on that, but I think that's a very reasonable argument.
I was going to bring up one point, though, sir, before you
Mm-hmm.
continue. Now, what if I live in my van down by the river? Is that not my premises?
That's a good question.
Thank
you know
you.
when that comes up, the 10% limitation when
Uh-huh.
you have a property at your other residence.
Right.
What if you have an RV and your other residence is an RV?
Oh wow.
I know we have a PLRB coverage question on that.
Oh.
I don't remember at all what we say about it, but I know we have that
You don't
question.
have all those thousands of cases memorized in your head, Tim? Shocking.
So I agree with you, Brennan. I think a highway, I don't want to call it a premises. It's a little too much for me. But could we call it in transit still?
Where was this fellow going?
Wrong way, if you remember.
Were they going some? I feel like to be in
Okay.
transit, you have to be going somewhere.
Good question. So let's say he was going from company office to a job site.
Right.
That feels like transit to me.
Yeah, definitely. Point A, point B. But what about the tools that were in the van and they were always in the van and they were not going to be dropped off and
Oh.
installed? They were just going to stay with the van wherever that van went.
They're not unloaded at night and put back into the
Nope,
building?
Nope, right
Huh.
back to premises. and
Fascinating.
they're- would you call that in transit?
Maybe while it's moving?
So the objects that's what in transit applies to, as opposed to like the contents in transit?
The contents in transit.
Yeah, I would say I guess they're not really in transit if they're not going to end up somewhere different.
Whoa. But if they're in the van and you're traversing across the highway, are they not in transit, sir?
Okay, I like
Okay.
this.
All right.
Okay.
I like this. Controversial topic.
Yes.
PLRB historically has gone with Brennan on this one.
Ooh.
The idea is a permanent destination.
Aha.
So if they're just moving wherever you move, and then you drive over there, and then you drive there, and the tools are always coming with you, where are they really being transited to? So I think the best argument for what's covered property here is going to be the materials and supplies that you're going to install on that job site.
That aren't going to be permanently in or usually in the van itself, right? They're eventually going to be pulled out and used.
Yeah, you got a water heater back there. You're going to take it out and put it in.
That makes sense.
So that's covered property. What about covered cause of loss? Do we
Ooh.
have any exclusions in the BP policy?
Now, is this named perils? What are we dealing with here?
BP
The
is in all risk or open peril forms. So we have a direct physical loss, meaning the burden shifts to you as the insurance company to point to that exclusion and say, this is why it's excluded.
Very good.
I'm pretty sure it's not just excluded, but illegal to be driving while under the influence of
Allegedly,
mushrooms or
right?
allegedly.
We don't
okay.
know that
Okay.
they were just
Allegedly.
in the van. You don't know that the gentleman was partaking of these substances. Or did
Maybe
we?
the substances
Did we
were in transit.
Right.
You know, I don't know.
Yeah, let's say. Well, that's going to be actually an issue that we're going to talk
Okay,
about.
well,
So
let's
the
talk about it.
dishonest or criminal acts exclusion.
Aha, good one.
Yeah. Dishonest or criminal acts, including theft by your blah, 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 employees.
All right.
Okay. So far, let's start with the burden of proof issue that you just talked about. So, criminal acts, we can
Yes.
say this is probably a criminal act, but he denies it.
Right.
So do we actually need to get a conviction in court? I would argue no, because that's a different standard. That's criminal law. You need the beyond a reasonable doubt in criminal law. Insurance law is civil law, so it's preponderance of the evidence, and we don't necessarily need to wait for a prosecutor to take this case all the way through criminal court,
Right.
or not do it for whatever reasons they have. The idea is you just need to show at least 50% likelihood that based on your evidence that he was driving under the influence, and that's a crime in that jurisdiction.
There's a word for criminal acts that you get, you get a judge to determine that you're guilty. It's called crimes.
Oh.
They could have written crimes. They wrote criminal acts, which to me seems broader, than crimes. They could have just said crimes.
Good point.
I like it. You know what else this could be? Malicious mischief.
I can't,
Especially
You
if
had
he's
to be
driving
ready
the
for
wrong
that
way
one.
too.
Can't
See?
get there on this
Right.
one.
No, all right, rats.
I'm trying.
Okay, I'm trying too. Every
But I
episode.
can't get there on this one.
All right.
Okay. We're going to say we can prove that one.
All right.
I have a guess. I don't know if it's going anywhere.
All right.
Which is, I feel like at some point you're going down the wrong highway. You've got to be outside the scope of your employment. You're no longer
Oh.
doing the job that you set out to do at some point. You've wandered out of the realm of what you're attempting to do.
Some would say course and scope of one's employment.
Sure.
Anything like that? Ringing a
Still
bell?
your employee, though.
Okay.
Okay.
Here's where I'm going on this one.
All right.
Causation. So let me give you a little twist on this to make the point.
Oh.
What if, yeah, he was under the influence, but actually he was a good driver. He was staying in his lane.
He had to have a couple drinks
drinks
to calm him down to drive correctly.
Well,
right?
I'm not going there,
right,
but
all
I'm
right.
saying this particular driver was doing a good job driving, and then someone swerved into his lane. Sober, drunk, on drugs, that accident would have happened
Oh, yeah.
anyway.
All
So if that, then I'm going to have a hard time saying the criminal act, DUI, caused the damage to the equipment.
Good point.
But here, okay, the do not enter sign, the 20 cars, the flipping of the van, swerving, probably. It's hard to imagine a sober, competent driver doing that. So I
Makes
think
sense.
causation is fair here.
Yeah.
Very good.
That's an interesting thing to keep in mind, that we look at these exclusions, they have to be part of the chain of causation. Even if something seems to trigger, you still got to look at that chain of causation. So that's an interesting thing to keep in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I think I got one more point we want to hit on in this one. Okay, so we have an exception in this exclusion. This exclusion does not apply to acts of destruction by your employees.
Oh.
Acts of destruction. So was
See, I just give you all the gray areas one after
I know
another. And
this one. So it kind of was. I mean, his actions, which was going crazy and turning the wheel too much, led to the overturn of said vehicle. So I'm thinking maybe we're heading there. Maybe I'm gonna say yes. What do you think, Bronner?
If you've got a same fact scenario, but instead of driving the wrong way, they just drove off into a ditch, I feel like that's not an act of destruction. But when you ignore that many signs and you're driving the wrong way, endangering people, that starts to feel like something somebody would call an act of destruction. But I guess it's not like they hit an oncoming car. Well, at least from what we know, they just flipped their van, destroyed their own self.
Right.
But
That's
the
an
whole
act
thing,
of destruction there, buddy. You're trying to talk yourself out of it. We were in agreement, Brendan, and now you're going down the other path. So.
I'm going down the wrong
I
wrong
know,
way,
you're
is what you're
right,
saying.
exactly.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm one of those 20 cars trying to stop you.
All right.
Stay on the
Honk
path.
your horn, yeah.
We're saying it's an act of destruction, right?
All right.
Right.
So it sounds like you're going kind of towards intent. That you need some, almost
yeah.
like vandalism.
Almost like malicious mischief.
Yes, because
Yes.
that's an act of destruction because you, well, that's pretty obvious. But yeah, I know of one case on this. It was, I believe, a drug den where whoever was living in that building was doing a lot to the building
Gotcha.
to set up everything, and the court
up
said,
the
yeah,
drug
that's
lab.
an act of destruction.
Okay.
But there was some intent there.
Okay.
Here, I don't think there was any intent for him. He did not want to cause that accident, believe
was
me.
a
He
traffic
wanted to do his
accident.
job and move on with life.
He just wanted to go in the right direction,
Yeah.
right? That's
Yes.
not an act of
Yes.
destruction.
And, well, again, he couldn't.
All right.
So I would argue against act of destruction, but there's only one case on it, so I probably could go, at least argue it either way.
All right.
Yeah. No, I see that. All right. So, Tim, what can we take away from this scenario?
Okay, well, we started with the BP policy, and we had off-premises coverage, a limited amount, but only for property that was in transit, which
Yes.
is most likely just going to be things that are going to stop at that job site and be left at the job site. Was there a covered cause of loss? Well, we have an exclusion for criminal acts of employees. We said the burden of proof is not the criminal burden of proof. It's only the lesser standard of preponderance of the evidence. We talked about causation. Did the criminal act cause the loss?
Right.
We said probably. And then there's this exception in here about acts of destruction and maybe not an act of destruction,
Right.
but hard to say for sure.
So it's almost like, it's almost like we're still in that gray area, working our way through this one.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to give you a black and white scenario. we won't be able to talk for 20 minutes about it.
That's perfect.
Now, that would be a good podcast.
Right.
We'll be done in 3 minutes.
What's the
Well,
quick
maybe we should-
answer?
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so that's my. We're running without a script this time
I know,
because
it's
we're at
crazy.
the conference, So I think
I think you're
next-
supposed to ask Mike
I think
something.
I say Mike.
You're supposed to
Yeah.
say, hey, is there
Adjuster-
something that we could look at
Is-
PLRB? And I would say, and I'm going to say, what you could do is if you have a scenario like this, maybe there's a couple key terms that you had there. Let's go out to plrb.org and check out the property hub. Pop in there in your search term. What was the one? Acts of destruction or
Dishonest or criminal acts.
there you go. Or mushroom using driver. Who knows what might come up at plrb.org for that one. You never know. So check out plrb.org. Use that search button. Can't find your answer. What can we do, Brendan? We can write coverage question, and a fabulous person like Tim can address your question and help you out as well, right?
Absolutely.
Perfect. And I don't know what we're going to put in the show notes, but Brendan, can we throw something in the show notes?
Sure, we can throw a recap of the key points from this episode. We can throw some links to our social media, and we can offer an opportunity for our listeners to subscribe and rate us.
Right.
And also, we'll include a phone number for
What's
them to
that?
call and leave their adjuster story, or just let us know what topics you'd like us to cover. And that's 630-509-8704. So,
Wait a minute. Can I make a request of a caller?
Sure, yeah.
Could a caller please call in and say, hey, I'd really like to know how the malicious mischief portion or peril in a policy may work. Would that be acceptable to you, Tim?
if we get that call, we're obligated to
address it, right.
address it.
So
Yeah.
callers, there's the one.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. Well, I'll keep the phone lines open.
Awesome.
All right.
But
Thanks,
for now,
everybody.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see you.
Bye-bye.
All right, see you next time.
The views and opinions expressed in this resource are those of the individual speaker and not necessarily those of the Property and Liability Resource Bureau, its membership, or any organization with which the presenter is employed or affiliated. The information, ideas, and opinions are presented as information only and not as legal advice or offers of representation. Individual policy language and state laws vary, and listeners should rely on guidance from their companies